Section 32 of the Diary of a Russian Lady. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Marie Christian. The Diary of a Russian Lady by Barbara Doukhovsky. Via Diest. On the following day, we started for Chernobyl to spend a week at the Via Diest. Our apartment was large and airy. The marble floor and whitewashed walls looked agreeably cool, with windows and balcony looking out on the lake, and the hotel terrace with flights of white marble steps descending to the water's edge. A boat belonging to the hotel was anchored near it. I went to bed early that night, and just as I was going to fall asleep, I heard a chorus of men's voices singing to a guitar accompaniment. I jumped out of bed and saw a boat moored to the terrace, in which a dozen men, gifted with fresh, strong voices, were giving us a serenade. The moon came up at that moment, silvering the lake and lighting up the scene. I leant out of the window to throw some coins in the direction of the singers, who were making the round of the group of visitors who had gathered on the terrace. I was very much disenchanted when I was told that these minstrels were, all of them, citizens of Como, who, having their day's work done, floated on the lake and sang ballads. Time passed slowly, one day like another. The heat obliged us to stay indoors all the afternoon, and I was glad to rest in our cool room. After dinner we took long walks in the park surrounding the hotel, with medieval castles, turrets, fountains, and waterfalls. On the top of a hillock stands a pavilion named Il Bello Sguardo, from which you have a full view of the lake. One morning we went for a row on the lake. I was at the wheel, and Sergei, taking off his coat, rowed on for an hour or more. Our light skiff flew like a bird on the beautiful lake, which is 50 miles long. The shores are lovely, surrounded by hills covered with fig trees, olive trees, pine trees, like big open umbrellas, and rich vineyards. The edges of the lake are strewn with pretty villas of the nobility of Milan, with splendid gardens stretching down to the water. The wonderful southern vegetation amazed us. Orange and lemon trees, laden with fruit, grown in groves in the open air. As there is no road, there is no approach but by water to the villas. Nearly all of them have a small separate embankment. One of the prettiest villas belongs to Taglioni, the renowned ballet dancer, who in long past days delighted our grandfathers. A little further on we saw the villa belonging to Madame Pasta, the celebrated French actress. On its frescoed fronts different musical instruments are painted. Bellini once upon a time had been on a visit to Madame Pasta, and the piano on which the great composer had improvised his music is kept there as a relic. We went another day by steamer to Menaggio. The hills that encircled these shores are covered by poor vegetation, only dull olive trees here and there. We were startled by the formidable report of the dynamite blowing up the rocks which are to serve for the building of houses. The hills all around caught up the sound and echoed it from one to the other. From Menaggio to Porlezza we continued our trip in a carriage, and took the boat again to Lugano. The Swiss frontier begins on the middle of the lake, and thus, for a short time, we found ourselves on Helvetic waters. Towards night we returned to Como by the railway. Baron Rosen, the Russian military attaché at Rome, came to spend 2 or 3 days at the Via Diest. We saw a great deal of him. He devoted his whole attention to me, and offered me his escort for moonlight promenades, but I preferred to regain prosaically my bed rather than stroll with him about the moonlit park. He called me obstinate and matter-of-fact, and said that I had warm water instead of blood, and that, like the sleeping beauty in the woods, I was asleep to the whole of life's pleasures, leading the existence of a nun. But his agreeable task to wake me up did not succeed. The heat continued to be overpowering. Then one morning, after many days of waiting, the rain fell. But in the afternoon the sun was ablaze, and again there was no breath of air in the overheated atmosphere. During dinner that same day, I saw by the expression of Sergey's face that he was preparing a surprise for me. And in fact, he made me awfully happy by announcing that instead of establishing me at Frau Weidemann's boarding house, he would take me with him to Piacenza, a small town in the neighborhood of which the maneuvers would take place. And thus it was settled that we should start on the following day for the Beromese Islands on Lake Maggiore, and go straight from there to Piacenza. We left the train at Verona and took the boat, coasting along Lake Maggiore. We passed Isola Madre and moored at Isola Bella, the residence of the Counts Berome, who dwell here only in autumn, but the beautiful feudal castle and gardens are open to the public. A smart footman showed us all over the place, after which we took a rowboat and crossed over to Isola Pescia, a fishing village with only nets all along the shore hanging out to dry, and a fishy smell over it all. On the water's edge small boats were moored, and a group of fishermen were sitting on the shore, mending their nets and counting their day's catch. Suddenly I heard someone calling, "Romeo!" I turned round and beheld a fisher lad, bare-legged, with clothes in tatters, and a dirty fish-basket over his arm, looking most unromantic, and bearing very little resemblance to the Shakespearean hero. On our return to Isola Bella, we took the train to Milan, where we arrived at sunset. Before we went to bed, it was settled that we should go next morning to Piacenza. When I awoke, Sergey made me understand that it would be far more convenient for him to go first by himself to Piacenza, in order to look out for a lodging for me. I was foolish enough to feel horribly hurt, and to take it into my head that my husband wanted to get rid of me. "Oh, very well, be it so," I said to myself, and made the vow to await the end of the maneuvers at Cernobbio at Frau Weidemann's boarding house. And acting on blind impulse, with quick tears rising to my eyes, I told Sergey I did not want him to be bothered with me, and intended to start with the first train to Como. Having said my say, I began instantly to throw my things into my trunk in petulant haste, drying my tears with quick, impatient dashes. Sergey tried to talk some common sense into me, but to reason with me at that moment was impossible. What I once made up my mind to do, I would do, no matter how hard it was. Sergey insisted upon accompanying me to Cernobbio. We had to be at the station by 8 o'clock, but with all these parleys we missed the train, and Sergey, knowing my tempers to be of short duration, was very glad of it, thinking that it was just as well that I should be allowed a little time to recover my good humor. But I made out that there was another train about 9. When we had secured a compartment to ourselves, I drew myself far into my corner and pulled down my veil to hide my tears, feeling as if I was going off to prison. We rolled on towards Como in gloomy spirits. The journey was a very silent one. How stupid of me to have made that vow, but it was too late to alter matters now, and pride, holding me back, I had to stand firm. Nevertheless, I blamed myself bitterly. All the pleasure of our trip was at an end. End of section 32.